One of the best closing techniques is your ability to use silence. Silence is the only pressure a professional salesperson should use. The problem with the silence is that if you're a new salesperson or you're not used to using silence, it not only puts the pressure on the customer, but on you because you're not used to it. Silence can be uncomfortable, and that's why it causes people to talk because they don't like it, and so they tend to fill in the silence by talking. That's why the best detectives know that if you're trying to get someone to talk, the best way is just to be quiet after a response and let the suspect fill in the blanks. It's really like a magic power, but if you aren't used to it, it works on you, the salesman, and makes you talk too much or too soon. You have to get used to it so the power of silence doesn't break you first. Now, there is a time when you don't want to use silence, so be sure to listen to the end to find out when. Also, I've left a link below on a video on how to use silence to not let an objection become a reaction in the close. One example of using silence is that after you ask for the sale, you need to remain quiet until you get a response. This could be the first time you assume and ask for the order, such as after you explain pricing and payment options and say, well, the next step would be for you to fill out the credit application and we can get everything started. Or it could be when you're further in the close and asking for the order by saying, so can we earn your business then? After both examples, be quiet until they say something. Don't keep talking or ask multiple times, so can we earn your business? Do you like what we have to offer? Doesn't this make sense? It sounds pushy and will actually push the customer away instead of bringing them closer. This is what's known as talking yourself out of the sale. I'm sure you've heard the saying, the first person who talks loses. Now right here it can seem like forever because in this situation, 30 seconds can feel like 10 minutes. You have to be quiet here. In a way, it's almost like giving them time to think it through and respond. Silence gives them time to think it through. When you interrupt that thought process, you're trying to force them through a gate instead of letting them walk into it on their own. So instead of letting them walk through the gate on their own, you try to push them in and then they resist. That's why a longer silence after you ask for the order is a good thing because it means they're close to doing it. They're thinking it through. Much better than a quick response from the customer like, oh no, or we need to think about it. Another place to use silence is when you're working the payment or you're starting to lower the price during the closing process. For example, in the close, once you've isolated the objection to the money and they say they can't afford it, you're nearly working the payment because affordability is a payment close. So let's say you're at $350 a month and they say, yeah, I just can't afford that monthly payment. Then I might say, well, if you change the deposit from $1,000 to $2,000, that would lower your payment to $325 a month. How does that sound? And that's a place you want to be silent. You need to remain silent until they respond with an objection or agree it's okay and they buy. If they respond with an objection such as, well, it's too much, then you would get the gap. How much too much? Oh, you're about $75 a month too much. And then work the payment lower again. Well, we could do this, and that would lower the payment to $300 a month. How does that sound? And remain silent again until they object again or agree it's okay. I always ask the question, how does that sound after lowering the payment or price? Because it's a good way of feeling them out instead of saying, now will you do it? Which sounds pushy. If they agree it's okay, then you can ask for the order. Now be sure you're actually getting an objection before you respond. Now if they say, well, that sounds better, that's still not an objection. It's just a reaction. So you need to remain silent until they actually say, well, it's still too much money before you make your next move. The other response is that you solve the problem and they say, oh, that sounds okay. Then when they say it sounds okay, ask for the order. So can we earn your business then? But the key is that you want to be silent once you drop the price or once you lower the payment until they respond with another objection or they agree you've solved the problem. Don't just keep talking through it. Well, we could lower the payment from $350 to $325 a month. How does that sound? Do you want to do it now? Does that sound better? You need to learn how to use the silence to pressure them. Now here's a pro tip. If they want to be at $250 a month and you're at $350 a month, don't just go there immediately. Now usually when you want to lower the monthly payment, you have four ways. You can get a bigger deposit, you can change the financing terms such as extending them out, you can change the product so the price is lower, or you can discount the price and therefore it lowers the payment. Don't just offer all four ways and give them what they want all at once. It's always better to drop in stages, such as going from $350 a month to $325 and then asking, how does that sound? Be silent until you get a response, then if they still object, lower the payment further another notch to maybe $300 a month. I like to do it this way because if you do it in stages, it makes them say the word no more. In a close, every time someone says no, it actually brings them closer to saying yes. It's almost like a whittling effect. For example, well, we could do this and your payment would be about $350 a month. How does that sound? No, that's too much. Like I said, I really want to be about $250 a month. Well, what about if we did this and that would lower your payment to about $325 a month? Well, it's getting better, but still a little bit too expensive. Well, what if we could do this, and that would lower your payment to about $300 a month? Now that sounds better, but I'm not just quite there. Well, how about if we do this, and you get to $275 a month? Now that I can handle. All closing is really a variation of getting them to say no until they say yes. Every time they say no, they're getting closer to saying yes. In its simplest terms, it sounds like saying, do you want to do this? No. Well, how about if we do this? No. Well, how about if we do this and this? Maybe. Well, how about if we do this, and this? Okay. And that in a nutshell is really what a lot of closes sound like if you do it correctly. Plus, every time they say no, they recommit to the amount they want. Like I said, Ron, I really want to be about $250 a month. Then when you finally get to $250 a month, they're committed because they kept saying they wanted $250 a month over and over before that. What I love about silence is it doesn't make it seem like you're pressuring the customer, but in reality, it increases the pressure. It's sort of like a no pressure pressure. Some of what I felt were the most brutal and drawn out closes in my mind. Oftentimes after the customer bought, they told me that what they liked is that I didn't try and pressure them into doing it. Also, the more you can use silence in the close, the less it makes you seem desperate, which is always a deal killer. Now, the only time I would definitely not use silence during the close is when all their questions have been answered and they're not saying anything. Then you need to ask for the order. For example, you're in the close and they ask a buying question like, well, does this include tax? You answer, yes, it does, and then there's a long silence. You need to ask for the order. So can we earn your business then?